The most powerful alpha in the realm wasn't supposed to be walking through the forgotten western woods that night. And she, broken, bleeding from a fresh rejection mark, with wolfsbane still burning in her veins, wasn't supposed to be alive. King Caspian Thorn had learned long ago to ignore his wolf. 15 years of silence between them, 15 years of the beast retreating so far into his consciousness that Caspian sometimes wondered if the creature had simply died. Other alphas spoke of their wolves as companions, as brothers sharing the same skin. His had become a ghost, present only in the enhanced senses and strength that marked him as Lycan, absent in every way that mattered. So when his wolf suddenly surged forward with enough force to make his vision blur, Caspian nearly lost control of his horse. Turn. The command came not as a thought, but as a compulsion, ancient and absolute. His horse, a massive black stallion that feared nothing, planted its hooves and refused to take another step down the main road. "Your Majesty?" Captain Ronan pulled his own mount alongside, hand already moving to his sword. "What is it?" Caspian couldn't answer. His wolf was clawing at the inside of his skull, desperate in a way he'd never experienced. The sensation was like drowning from the inside out, like something essential was dying and only he could save it. Now. Turn now. The forgotten western woods stretched to their left, a tangle of dead oaks and rotting undergrowth that even the local wolves avoided. Nothing lived there anymore. Nothing should have called to him from its depths. But something did. "Continue to the fortress," Caspian heard himself say. "I'll follow shortly." "Sire, I cannot allow—" "That was not a request, Captain." Ronan's jaw tightened, but 15 years of service had taught him when the king's word was final. He signalled to the remaining guards, and within moments, Caspian was alone on the road, his horse still trembling beneath him. He dismounted. The pull was too strong for riding now. His wolf wanted to run, to hunt, to find. He shifted without conscious thought, clothes tearing as his body reshaped itself into something larger, darker, more dangerous than any common werewolf. The Lycan form stood nearly 7 feet tall, caught between man and beast, pure lethal power wrapped in midnight fur. He ran. The dead forest swallowed him whole. Branches scraped against his shoulders. Roots tried to tangle his feet, but nothing could slow him. His wolf had seized control so completely that Caspian was merely a passenger in his own body, watching through golden eyes as they tore through the darkness. The smell hit him first. Blood. Wolfsbane. And beneath both something like moonflowers and winter rain, so sweet it made his chest ache. Then he saw her. She was crumpled against a dying oak, her small body curved inward as if she were trying to disappear. Dark hair spilled across her face, matted with dirt and dried blood. Her dress, once white maybe, had been reduced to torn rags that barely covered her thin frame. But it was her neck that stopped him cold. The rejection mark was still open. Caspian had seen rejection wounds before. Every alpha had. When a mate bond was severed, the bite mark that had sealed it turned against the rejected wolf, burning from the inside out until it scarred over. The process was agonizing but survivable, lasting perhaps an hour at most. This wound was still weeping blood, the flesh around it blackened and raw. No natural rejection did this. The edges were tinged with something darker than infection, something that whispered of forbidden magic and deliberate cruelty. Someone hadn't just rejected this woman. Someone had tried to make sure she died screaming. And yet, she was still breathing. He shifted back to his human form, not caring that he stood naked in the cold. Slowly, carefully, he approached her, his wolf whimpering for the first time in 15 years. "Easy," he murmured. "I won't hurt you." She lifted her head. Her eyes were silver. Not the pale grey common among some wolf lines, but true silver, bright as coins even in the darkness. They were also hollow, empty of everything except exhaustion and pain, and a terrible, terrible resignation. "Just let me die," she whispered. "Please, just let me die." "Mate," The word exploded through his consciousness with the force of a thunderclap. His wolf, silent for 15 years, screamed it again and again, the sound reverberating through every cell of his body. Mate, 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 his mate, his. And someone had tried to destroy her. Caspian reached for her before he could stop himself, but the moment his fingers brushed her arm, she recoiled with a cry that shattered something inside him. She pressed herself against the tree, her hands coming up to shield her face, and he realized with sickening clarity that she wasn't seeing him. She was seeing another alpha, another monster. "Please," she begged, "I'll go. I'll disappear. I won't tell anyone about the bloodline, I swear. Just don't, please don't. I'm not going to hurt you." But she wasn't listening anymore. Her eyes rolled back, her body going limp as unconsciousness claimed her. Caspian caught her before she could hit the ground, cradling her against his chest with hands that shook for the first time in decades. She weighed nothing. She was burning with fever, and the rejection wound on her neck pulsed with dark magic, still trying to finish what it had started. He should take her to the royal healers. That was protocol. That was law. Injured wolves found in the king's territory were processed through official channels, their identities recorded, their packs contacted, their stories verified. It was the system that had kept the realm stable for 300 years. Caspian looked at the woman in his arms, at the evidence of torture carved into her throat, at the way she flinched even in unconsciousness when his arms tightened around her. Protocol could burn. He ran. The private fortress had been his grandfather's, built into the northern cliffs for a queen who never came. Caspian had kept it staffed but empty for years, using it only when the palace walls felt too close and the weight of his crown too heavy. Tonight, it would serve a different purpose. The head housekeeper, a weathered she-wolf named Maren, who had served 3 generations of Thorn Kings, met him at the gates. Her eyes went wide at the sight of him, naked, feral-eyed, carrying a dying woman like she was made of spun glass. "Your Majesty." "The blue chamber," Caspian cut her off. "Hot water, clean bandages, and every healing herb in the stores. Now." Maren had questions. He could see them forming behind her eyes, decades of curiosity and concern threatening to spill over. But she was also wise enough to recognize a king beyond reason, and she simply bowed before hurrying to obey. The blue chamber had belonged to his mother once, before the wasting sickness had claimed her. Caspian had kept it exactly as she'd left it, all soft colours and gentle fabrics, the kind of room that promised safety. He laid his mate on the bed and tried not to notice how small she looked against the pillows. The rejection mark was spreading. He could see it now, the dark tendrils creeping beneath her skin like poison roots, reaching toward her heart with malevolent purpose. Normal wolfsbane would have been burned out by her healing already. This was something else entirely. This was designed to kill slowly, to make the victim suffer every moment of their death. "Who did this to you?" he asked, knowing she couldn't hear him. She turned her face away, a small sound of distress escaping her cracked lips. Even unconscious, even dying, she was trying to escape. Maren arrived with 3 other servants, all of them carrying supplies. To their credit, none of them asked questions as they set to work cleaning the woman's wounds, forcing healing teas between her lips, wrapping her injuries in poultices that smelled sharply of restoration magic. Caspian stood in the corner, watching every movement, his wolf pacing restlessly beneath his skin. "The mark won't close," Maren finally said, her voice careful. "Whatever was used in the rejection, it's not natural. I've seen dark magic once before when I was young. This is worse. Can you stop it? I can slow it. Maybe. But to actually heal it," she hesitated, "she would need to complete a new bond, a true one. The old magic would have to be overwritten by something stronger. A new bond. A mate bond. His mate bond. But she didn't know him. She feared him. The very sight of an alpha sent her into blind panic, and the thought of forcing any kind of bond on her, even one that would save her life, made his wolf snarl with protective rage. Keep her alive, Caspian ordered. Whatever it takes, I'll find another way. He didn't know if another way existed. But he would tear the realm apart, looking for one. The message arrived at dawn. Caspian had spent the night in a chair beside his mate's bed, watching her breathe, counting the seconds between each laboured rise and fall of her chest. He hadn't slept. He wasn't sure he'd ever sleep again. Captain Ronan's handwriting was characteristically blunt. Your absence noted at court. Lord Vaughan asking questions. The council demands an audience. The council. 12 lords who had spent 15 years trying to force him into a political marriage, who saw his mateless status as a weakness to be exploited. If they discovered he'd brought an unknown Omega into his private fortress, an injured, possibly claimed Omega, they would tear her apart searching for leverage. And Lord Vaughan. The name sat heavy in his stomach. Vaughan controlled the Eastern Territories, had been pushing for more power for years, had been rumoured to dabble in magics the realm had outlawed centuries ago, had been searching, Caspian suddenly remembered, for a mate of pure bloodline. I won't tell anyone about the bloodline, the woman had begged. Please don't. His wolf went very, very still. Caspian looked at the woman in the bed, at her silver eyes hidden behind closed lids, at the dark magic trying to devour her from the inside out. He thought about Lord Vaughan's Eastern Territory, about the small packs that bordered the forgotten Western Woods, about Omegas who disappeared and were never spoken of again. Someone had tried to kill this woman because of what she was. Someone had failed. And when they discovered she'd survived, when they realised she'd been found by the one alpha in the realm powerful enough to protect her, the game had already begun. Caspian just hadn't known he was playing. He pressed his thumb gently against her unmarked wrist, feeling her pulse flutter beneath his touch. Weak but fighting. Dying but not dead. Hold on, he told her quietly. I don't know your name or your story or why someone wanted you erased, but I'm going to find out. And when I do... His wolf finished the thought with a promise that echoed through his bones. They will burn. 300 miles to the east, Lord Marcus Vaughan stood in his private study and stared at the scout's report with an expression that had sent stronger men running. What do you mean she disappeared? The scout trembled. The woods, my lord. We tracked her to the edge and then... Nothing. Her trail just vanished. Omegas don't vanish, especially dying ones. I know, my lord. I can't explain it. It's like something or someone took her. Marcus set the report down very carefully. The rejection should have killed her within the hour. He'd made sure of it, had paid a fortune in dark coin to acquire the curse that would guarantee her silence. Eleanor couldn't be allowed to live, not with what she knew, not with what flowed through her veins. But she had lived, and now she was gone. Find her, he said softly. I don't care if you have to search every inch of the realm. Find her before she talks, or I'll make what I did to her look merciful compared to what I'll do to you. The scout fled. Marcus turned to the window, looking out at his territory with eyes that saw nothing. Somewhere out there, his rejected mate was breathing. Somewhere out there, his secrets were waiting to be exposed. He had worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let one worthless Omega destroy everything. She would die. Whatever it took, however long it took, Eleanor would die. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. She woke to the sound of fire crackling and the smell of something herbal and warm. For a moment she simply lay there, eyes closed, trying to remember how she'd gotten to wherever she was. A bed, soft, impossibly soft, like sleeping on clouds, clean sheets that smelled of lavender, a pillow beneath her head that didn't scratch or smell of mildew. Wrong. This was all wrong. She didn't deserve soft things. The thought came from somewhere deep, a truth she couldn't quite grasp but felt in her bones. She was meant for cold floors and thin blankets, for scraps and silence and staying invisible. That was what Omegas got. That was what Omegas were. But when she tried to remember why she knew this, where she'd learned it, there was nothing. Just darkness and the echo of pain. She opened her eyes. The room was blue. Soft, pale blue like a winter morning, with cream-coloured curtains filtering light from tall windows. The furniture was simple but beautiful. A wardrobe of dark wood, a vanity with a mirror she couldn't see from this angle, chairs upholstered in fabric that matched the walls. A fire burned in a stone hearth across from the bed, and beside it, a man. Terror seized her throat before she could think. She scrambled backward, her body screaming in protest, the wound on her neck tearing with fresh agony. Her back hit the headboard and she couldn't go any farther, couldn't escape, couldn't... Easy. His voice was low, careful, like he was approaching a wounded animal. I'm not going to hurt you. You're safe here. She didn't believe him, couldn't believe him. The word safe meant nothing. It was a lie alphas told before they showed you exactly how unsafe you really were. But he didn't move toward her. He stayed in his chair by the fire, his hands visible and empty, his posture deliberately unthreatening despite the obvious power coiled in his frame. He was big, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and eyes the colour of burnished gold. Handsome, in a severe way. The kind of face that didn't smile often but would be devastating when it did. Alpha. Every instinct she possessed screamed the word. This man was an alpha, and she was alone with him, and she couldn't remember why or how, but she knew that being alone with an alpha meant pain. Who are you? Her voice came out as a ragged whisper, her throat raw like she'd been screaming for hours. Maybe she had. Where am I? My name is Caspian. He didn't answer the second question. I found you 3 nights ago in the western woods. You were dying. Do you remember? 3 nights. She'd been unconscious for 3 nights, helpless, at the mercy of this stranger who called himself Caspian. The thought made her stomach turn. I don't... She pressed a hand to her temple, trying to push through the fog. I don't remember anything. Nothing. Pain. The word fell out of her before she could stop it. I remember pain, and being held down, and someone saying I deserved... She broke off, her breath coming faster. I can't see their faces, I can't remember names or places or anything, I don't even... The realization hit her like a physical blow. I don't know my name. She looked at him, this alpha called Caspian, and waited for him to tell her she was lying. To accuse her of playing games, of hiding something, of being worthless and stupid and everything else she somehow knew she'd been called before. The words were there, waiting in the empty spaces of her memory. She just couldn't remember who had said them. But Caspian only nodded, something flickering in those golden eyes that might have been sympathy. The healers said this might happen. The rejection, whatever was used on you, it wasn't natural. The damage went deeper than the physical. Rejection. Yes, that was right. Someone had rejected her, had severed the mate bond with such violence that it should have killed her. She could feel the wound now, a constant burning ache at the side of her throat, spreading poison through her veins with every heartbeat. Why didn't it? She asked. Kill me, I mean. It was supposed to. I don't know. He leaned forward slightly and she pressed herself harder against the headboard. He stopped, immediately settling back. You're stronger than whoever did this expected, or maybe just too stubborn to die. She didn't feel strong. She felt hollowed out, scraped clean of everything that made a person real. A shell with no memories, no identity, no pack. I'm an Omega, she said quietly. It was the one truth she held, the foundation of everything she couldn't remember. I know that much. I can feel it. The lowest rank. Worth nothing. Caspian's expression didn't change, but something in the air around him shifted, tightened. Who told you that? I don't know, but it's true, isn't it? Omegas serve. Omegas obey. Omegas don't matter. No. The word was flat. Absolute. Whoever taught you that was lying. Omegas are rare and precious. They're the heart of a pack, the healers, the nurturers, the ones who hold everything together. Anyone who treats an omega as worthless doesn't deserve to have one. She stared at him, waiting for the catch. There was always a catch. Pretty words followed by ugly actions. She didn't remember learning this, but the knowledge lived in her body. In the way she flinched when he stood, in the way her hands curled into protective fists. But Caspian just walked to a small table near the window and poured water from a pitcher into a glass. He brought it to her slowly, stopping several feet from the bed to set it on the nightstand. "You should drink," he said, "and eat when you feel ready. The healers have been keeping you alive with teas and broths, but you need real food." "Why are you helping me?" The question escaped before she could think better of it. She watched him freeze, something complicated moving across his face before he smoothed it away. "Because you needed help." "That's not a reason. No one helps an omega for free. What do you want from me?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rougher than before. Like the words were being dragged out of him against his will. "I don't want anything from you, except for you to heal, to live, to find out who did this to you so I can—" He stopped abruptly, jaw tightening. "So we can make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." She didn't believe him, but she also didn't have the strength to argue. Her body was trembling just from the effort of sitting up, and the wound on her neck pulsed with renewed agony. She reached for the water glass and nearly dropped it, her fingers too weak to grip properly. Caspian moved before she could blink, his hand closing around hers to steady the glass. The touch was gentle, so gentle it made something deep in her chest ache with confusion. His skin was warm and slightly rough, the hand of a man who worked rather than just commanded. When their eyes met, she saw it again. That flicker of something she couldn't name, something that looked almost like pain. He pulled away quickly, putting distance between them. "Rest," he said. "I'll send someone with food, and if you need anything at all, there's a bell cord by the bed. Pull it, and someone will come." "You're leaving?" She didn't know why she asked, didn't know why his answer mattered. Caspian paused at the door, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't read. "I'll be back to check on you, but I thought you might be more comfortable with Maren. She's the head housekeeper here, a she-wolf. She won't hurt you." He thought she'd be more comfortable without an alpha looming over her. He was right. Her whole body had been tight with fear since she'd opened her eyes, but his absence didn't bring the relief she expected. It brought something else entirely, something that felt dangerously like loss. She slept again, waking to find an older woman sitting where Caspian had been, knitting something soft and green. Maren, she assumed. The woman's face was lined but kind, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical braid. She smiled when she saw her patient's eyes open. "There you are, lamb. Master Caspian said you woke earlier. How are you feeling?" "Master Caspian. Not Lord, not Alpha, just Master." Maybe that was normal. She had no way of knowing. "Confused," she admitted. "Scared. I don't remember anything." "That's to be expected, with what was done to you." Maren set aside her knitting and reached for a tray on the side table. But confusion and fear won't heal that body. Food might. "Think you can manage some soup?" The soup was rich and savoury, filled with soft vegetables and shreds of meat. She ate slowly at first, waiting for her stomach to revolt, but it welcomed the nourishment like a long-lost friend. She hadn't realised how hungry she was until the first spoonful hit her tongue. "Good girl," Maren said approvingly. "Finish all of that and there's bread and honey waiting." "You're being so kind." The words came out wondering, almost suspicious. "Why?" Maren's expression softened. "Because someone hurt you badly, lamb, and kindness is the only medicine for that particular wound. Besides," she glanced toward the door, something knowing in her eyes, "Master Caspian would have my head if I treated you with anything less than the utmost care. He's—" "Not what I expected." And what did you expect? She couldn't answer. She didn't remember what she'd expected from Alpha's, only that Caspian didn't match. He moved too carefully, spoke too softly, looked at her with something that wasn't hunger or possession or cruelty. It made her feel off balance in a way that had nothing to do with her injuries. The days that followed were strange and slow. She slept often, her body demanding rest to fuel its healing. When she was awake, Maren was usually there, keeping her company with idle chatter about the household and the territory, never pushing for information she couldn't give. Meals came regularly, more food than she could eat, each dish more delicious than the last. She was given clean nightgowns of soft cotton, given brushes for her hair, given everything she could possibly need. And Caspian came, every day, sometimes twice. He always knocked first, always waited for her permission to enter, always kept his distance, sitting in that same chair by the fire, asking how she felt, whether she needed anything, whether she'd remembered something new. The answers were always the same. Tired. Nothing. No. But he kept asking anyway. On the fourth day, she woke to find him asleep in the chair. He looked younger like this, with the hard lines of his face relaxed and his dark hair falling across his forehead. His shirt was wrinkled, his jaw shadowed with stubble, and there were dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept in far too long. A book lay open in his lap, forgotten. She watched him for a long moment, trying to understand the strange feeling that bloomed in her chest. He'd been up all night, she realized, sitting here in the dark, watching over her while she slept, guarding her from threats she couldn't name. Why? She didn't understand him, didn't understand any of this. The kindness, the care, the way he looked at her like she mattered. It didn't fit with anything she knew about Alphas. And she knew things about Alphas, even if she couldn't remember where she'd learned them. She knew they took what they wanted. She knew they hurt Omegas for sport. She knew that gentleness was always a trap. But Caspian hadn't sprung any traps. He'd only given, asked for nothing, kept his distance even when she could see his hands twitching with the urge to reach for her. She was still staring when his eyes opened. For a heartbeat, before awareness returned, he looked at her with such naked longing that it stole her breath. Then he blinked, and the mask slid back into place, and he was just Caspian again, careful, controlled, contained. "I'm sorry," he said, straightening in the chair. "I didn't mean to fall asleep, I just wanted to check on you." "You've been here all night?" "I couldn't sleep." He stood, stretching muscles that must have been stiff from hours in the chair. "How do you feel?" "Better. The wound doesn't burn as much." She hesitated, then pushed forward before she could lose her nerve. "Caspian, why are you doing this? Really?" He went still. "You don't know me," she continued. "You found a dying Omega in the woods, and instead of leaving me there, instead of taking me to the authorities or just letting me go, you brought me here. You've been caring for me yourself, sitting by my bed, not sleeping." "Why?" You told me because I needed help. That's not an answer. There must be dozens of wounded wolves who need help. You can't possibly care for all of them personally." Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the mask just for a moment, showing the turmoil beneath. "No," he admitted quietly. "I can't." "Then why me?" He looked at her for a long moment, those golden eyes burning with something she couldn't name. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion he couldn't quite hide. "I don't know how to explain it. When I found you, something in me..." He stopped, shook his head. "I can't let you die. I can't walk away. I can't do anything except make sure you're safe and healed and whole. It's not rational. It's not strategic. It's just necessary." "That doesn't make any sense." "I know." A ghost of a smile crossed his face, bitter and self-aware. "Believe me, I know." She should have been frightened by the intensity in his words, by the possessiveness lurking beneath the surface, the claim he was clearly fighting not to make. But instead she felt something else entirely. Something warm and unfamiliar, unfurling in her chest like a flower blooming in winter. Before she could respond, the door opened and a new figure entered. He was older than Caspian, with silver hair pulled back from a sharp-featured face and intelligent dark eyes that swept over her with clinical assessment. He carried a leather bag and moved with the efficiency of someone who had no time for pleasantries. "Master Caspian," he said, "I came as quickly as I could. This is the patient." "Yes." "This is—" Caspian faltered. They'd never solved the problem of her name. "You may call me whatever you like," she said quietly. "I can't remember who I was. Maybe that person is gone." The older man's expression flickered with something like sympathy before professionalism took over. "I am Aldrich, the royal—" He caught himself glancing at Caspian. "The regional physician. I've been asked to examine you, if you'll permit it. The wound on your neck is responding to standard treatment but not healing properly. I need to understand why." She looked to Caspian instinctively, hating herself for it. She shouldn't need his permission, shouldn't care about his approval. But he gave her a small nod, and she felt her shoulders relax. "All right." The examination was thorough but gentle. Aldrich asked questions she couldn't answer, about her medical history, her pack, her family, then moved on without frustration when she shook her head. He checked her pulse, her eyes, her reflexes. He studied the wound on her neck for long minutes, his expression growing more troubled with each passing moment. Finally, he took a small vial from his bag and held it up to catch the light. "I'm going to take a sample of your blood," he explained. "There are tests I can run that might tell us more about the magic used against you, and about your own bloodline. The rejection wound isn't closing because it was designed not to, but your body should have succumbed to it by now. The fact that you're alive suggests there's something in your blood fighting back." The needle prick was brief, and soon Aldrich was holding a vial of deep crimson against the firelight. He frowned at it, turning it this way and that. "This will take some time to analyze properly. I'll return when I have results." He packed his bag with precise movements, then paused at the door. "In the meantime, she should rest. And you—" He looked at Caspian with something between exasperation and concern. "You should sleep. You're no good to anyone if you collapse." "I'll sleep when she's healed." Aldrich sighed, the sigh of a man who had given advice he knew would be ignored, and left. The physician returned 2 days later. She was stronger now, able to sit up without trembling, able to walk short distances with Marin's assistance. The wound on her neck had finally begun to close, though the skin around it remained discoloured, marked with the evidence of dark magic. She'd caught a glimpse of it in the vanity mirror that morning and had to look away quickly, sickened by the ugliness of it. Someone had done this to her. Someone had looked at her with hatred and pressed their lips to her throat and poured poison into the rejection. She didn't remember their face, but she remembered the feeling, being unwanted so violently that they'd tried to erase her from existence. Aldrich's expression when he entered was careful. Too careful. He glanced at Caspian, who was already in his customary chair, and something passed between them that made her stomach tighten with dread. "What did you find?" she asked. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. "I don't want to be protected from my own truth. Whatever you found, I need to know." Aldrich hesitated, then nodded slowly. He set his bag on the side table and pulled out a rolled piece of parchment, spreading it flat so they could all see. It was covered in symbols and diagrams she didn't understand, but one image stood out: a crescent moon surrounded by stars, drawn in shimmering silver ink. "Your blood," Aldrich began carefully, "is unlike anything I've encountered. The magic in the rejection is powerful, designed to be fatal, but your bloodline is fighting it, has been fighting it from the moment it was inflicted." "My bloodline?" "You carry the markers of a very old, very powerful line. One I've only ever read about in histories." He pointed to the silver moon symbol. "This is the sigil of the Silver Moon Pack." She didn't recognize the name. It sparked nothing in her empty memory. No flicker of familiarity or belonging. But beside her, Caspian went absolutely still. "The Silver Moon Pack was destroyed," he said flatly. 20 years ago. There were no survivors. That was what everyone believed. Aldrich's voice was grave. The pack was massacred. Every man, woman, and child hunted down and slaughtered. But the bloodline markers don't lie. She is descended from Silver Moon. Directly descended, if I'm reading this correctly. "That's impossible. I was there when—" Caspian stopped abruptly, something dark moving across his face. "My father ordered the attack. He told me everyone was killed." His father. The way he said it, cold, distant, laden with old pain, suggested a relationship far from loving. "The previous king believed in the prophecy," Aldrich said quietly. "Many did. The seers of that time spoke of a daughter of Silver Moon who would either save the Lycan kingdom or destroy it. Your father chose to eliminate the threat before it could materialize. By slaughtering an entire pack." Caspian's voice was bitter. "I was 15. He made me watch." She looked between them, trying to piece together a puzzle she didn't have all the pieces for. What prophecy? What does this have to do with me? Aldrich exchanged another look with Caspian, then turned to face her fully. The prophecy spoke of the last daughter of Silver Moon, a child who would be born in the final days of the pack, who would carry their power forward into the future. The seers were unclear on what exactly she would do. Prophecies rarely deal in specifics. But they were certain of one thing. She would be the most powerful Omega the realm had ever seen, powerful enough to change the course of history. "I'm not powerful." The denial came automatically. "I'm nothing. I couldn't even stop someone from rejecting me." "You survived a rejection designed to be unsurvivable. That alone suggests power beyond anything normal." Aldrich's expression softened slightly. "I don't know how you escaped the massacre. Perhaps someone smuggled you out as an infant, hid you away, raised you without knowing what you were. But you are Silver Moon, the last of your line. And that makes you both invaluable and incredibly dangerous." "Dangerous to whom?" "To everyone." Caspian spoke now, his voice heavy with implications she didn't fully understand. "There are factions in the realm who believed my father was right, who would kill you the moment they learned of your existence, just to prevent the prophecy from coming true. And there are others who would see you as a weapon to be used, a tool for gaining power. But I don't want power. I don't even remember who I am." "It won't matter to them." He stood abruptly, pacing to the window and staring out at whatever lay beyond. "The fact that you exist will be enough. If word of this gets out—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. She sat in silence, trying to absorb what she'd been told. She was the last daughter of a massacred pack, the subject of a prophecy that had gotten her entire family killed, a potential threat to some and a potential weapon to others. No wonder someone had tried to destroy her. No wonder the rejection had been laced with dark magic. Whoever had done this knew what she was, and they'd tried to eliminate her before anyone else could find out. "What do I do?" she asked quietly. Caspian turned from the window. His expression was fierce, determined, the look of a man facing down an army. "Nothing. You do nothing except heal and recover. I will handle the rest. You can't protect me from everyone. Watch me." The certainty in his voice should have frightened her, the possessiveness lurking beneath it, the claim he still wouldn't speak aloud. But instead she felt something else, a warmth spreading through her chest, a feeling that might have been hope. She didn't know who she was, didn't know who had hurt her or why, but she knew, with a certainty that went beyond logic, that Caspian would burn the world down before he let anyone harm her again. It was a strange thing to feel safe in the presence of an alpha, to look at this powerful, dangerous man and see not a threat, but a shield. Maybe the old her would have known what to make of it. The woman she'd been before the rejection, before the memory loss, before she'd been reduced to nothing but pain, and fear. But that woman was gone, and whoever rose from her ashes would have to learn everything anew. That night, she dreamed. She stood in a meadow bathed in silver moonlight, surrounded by wolves with eyes like stars. They watched her without fear, without menace, with something that felt like recognition, like welcome. "Daughter," they whispered. "Finally, you've come home." She woke with tears on her face and the ghost of a name on her lips. Elena. She didn't know if it was hers, didn't know if it was real or just a fragment of a shattered dream. But she held onto it anyway, pressing the syllables against her heart like a talisman. Elena. Maybe it meant nothing, or maybe it was the first step toward remembering everything. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 3. The nightmares came without warning. She was running through darkness, her bare feet torn and bleeding, branches clawing at her skin like grasping hands. Behind her, wolves howled, not the wild songs of free creatures, but the organized baying of hunters closing in on prey. She could hear their paws thundering against the earth, could smell the metallic tang of her own fear mixing with the copper scent of old blood. "You can't escape, little Omega. You belong to me." The voice slithered through her mind like poison, familiar in a way that made her stomach turn. She knew that voice, had lived in terror of it for years, flinching at its approach, learning to make herself small and silent and invisible. "I paid good money for you. Did you think I'd let you go?" The memory slammed into her with physical force. A room with stone walls, chains, a man with dark hair and cruel eyes, his smile sharp as broken glass as he looked down at her trembling form. "The claiming ceremony is tonight. You will accept my mark, or you will learn what happens to Omegas who refuse their alphas." She had refused. Even knowing what would come, even understanding the price of defiance, she had looked into those cold eyes and said no. And the punishment, she woke screaming. Strong arms caught her before she could throw herself from the bed, pulling her against a broad chest as her body convulsed with terror. She fought blindly, clawing at whatever held her, certain that he had found her, that the nightmare had followed her into waking. "Easy, easy. You're safe. He's not here. No one's going to hurt you." Caspian's voice cut through the panic, low and steady and impossibly gentle. She stopped fighting. Not because she'd made a conscious choice, but because something in her recognized him, recognized the feel of his arms, the scent of pine and wood smoke that clung to his skin, the rumble of his wolf beneath the surface. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. The nightgown she wore was soaked with sweat, and her throat was raw from screaming. How long had she been trapped in that nightmare? How long had he been holding her? "Thornwood," she gasped. "My pack was called Thornwood, and his name, the alpha who, Marcus. His name was Marcus." She felt Caspian go rigid against her, every muscle in his body tensing like a predator sighting prey. But his voice remained calm when he spoke. "Tell me everything you remember." So she did. Haltingly at first, then in a flood of words she couldn't stop, the memories pouring out of her like water from a shattered dam. The traffickers who had taken her as a child, she couldn't remember from where, couldn't recall anything before the cage they'd kept her in. The auction where Marcus had purchased her, looking her over with calculating eyes before announcing his price. The years of service in his household, invisible and silent, until she'd come of age and his intentions had changed. "He wanted to claim me." Her voice had gone flat, dissociated, as if she were describing something that had happened to someone else. "Omega bloodlines are valuable. He said mine was particularly potent. I didn't know what he meant then. I just knew I'd rather die than let him touch me." Caspian's arms tightened around her, his wolf so close to the surface that she could feel the heat of the beast against her back. But he didn't interrupt, didn't push. just held her while she purged the poison of her memories. The ceremony was supposed to bind us permanently. Forced claims are forbidden by the old laws, but Marcus didn't care about old laws. He had a witch, someone who knew dark magic, who could twist the claiming bite into something unbreakable. She shuddered. I fought, screamed, begged. He held me down and... Her voice broke. I thought I'd die from the pain, but I didn't. I just went somewhere else, somewhere inside where he couldn't reach me. And when it was over, when he thought I'd finally been broken, I ran. How did you escape? There was a servant, another Omega, older than me. She'd been with the pack her whole life, survived by being useful and invisible. She found me after the ceremony, smuggled me out through the servant passages while Marcus was celebrating with his inner circle. The memory was hazy, overlaid with pain and shock. I don't know what happened to her. He probably killed her when he realized I was gone. Silence fell between them, heavy with the weight of what she'd revealed. She could feel Caspian's heart beating against her back, too fast, the rhythm of a man struggling to contain his rage. The rejection, she continued quietly, that came later. He caught me near the border of his territory 3 days after I ran. He was furious, not because I'd left, but because I'd made him look weak in front of his allies. He said if he couldn't have me, no one would. And then she raised her hand to her throat, touching the wound that still marked her, the wound that should have killed her. He used the witch's magic again, made the rejection into something that would destroy me slowly, painfully. He wanted me to suffer. A bitter laugh escaped her. He always did enjoy watching me suffer. Caspian didn't speak for a long moment. When he finally did, his voice was barely human, roughened by the wolf straining against its chains. I'm going to kill him. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a promise. It was simply a statement of fact, as certain as the rising of the sun. Caspian? He hurt you. He bought you like property, tried to force himself on you, and then tried to murder you when you escaped. There is no version of this where he lives. She should have argued. Should have pointed out that Marcus was a powerful alpha with a large pack and dangerous allies, that going after him would mean war, that she wasn't worth the cost. But when she opened her mouth to say these things, different words came out entirely. Teach me to fight, Caspian pulled back slightly, looking down at her with surprise. I'm done being helpless, she said, and her voice was stronger now, steadier. I'm done being the prey that runs and hides and hopes the wolves don't catch me. If he comes for me, if anyone comes for me, I want to be able to defend myself. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then something shifted in his expression, respect mixing with that other emotion she still couldn't name. All right, he said. We start tomorrow. 300 miles to the east, Marcus Vaughan woke from a dead sleep with his blood on fire. The corrupted bond, the twisted connection that should have withered when Elena died, was pulsing with sudden, impossible life. She was alive. Not just alive, but healing. He could feel it like an itch beneath his skin, her strength returning, her wolf growing stronger with each passing day. How? The dark magic should have been unstoppable. The witch had promised him it would devour her from the inside out, leaving nothing but an empty shell. But something was fighting it. Something was keeping her alive despite everything he'd done to destroy her. And her memories were returning. He could sense that too, fragments of the bond feeding him information he didn't want. She was remembering the ceremony, remembering his name, remembering everything. Find her, he snarled at the shadows. His most trusted tracker materialized from the darkness, a scarred wolf named Silas, who had never failed him. I don't care how long it takes or what it costs. Find her and bring her back to me. Alive? Marcus considered the question. Eleanor alive meant Eleanor could talk, could reveal secrets that would destroy him. But Eleanor alive also meant answers. How had she survived? Where had she been hiding? And most importantly, who was protecting her? For now, he decided. But if she resists, if she tries to run again? His smile was a sharp, ugly thing. Make sure she understands that death was a mercy she forfeited when she defied me. Silas bowed and vanished into the night. Marcus remained awake until dawn, feeling the bond pulse with his rejected mate's growing strength, planning all the ways he would make her regret surviving. Training began at sunrise. She had expected something like the combat lessons she vaguely remembered from her time in Thornwood. Brutal drills designed to teach obedience through pain, instructors who delighted in humiliating the weaker wolves. What she got instead was Caspian standing in a sunlit courtyard, wearing simple training clothes, his expression patient and encouraging. "We'll start with basics," he said. "Stance, balance, how to fall without hurting yourself. Fighting isn't about brute strength, it's about understanding your body and your opponents." The first few sessions were humbling. Her body was still recovering from the rejection wound, her muscles weak from weeks of illness and inactivity. She stumbled, fell, struggled to complete even the simplest exercises. But Caspian never lost patience, never showed frustration. He corrected her gently, praised her small victories, pushed her just hard enough to improve without breaking. "You're stronger than you realize," he told her after she successfully blocked his slow-motion strike for the first time. "Your wolf has been fighting for your life since the rejection. She knows how to survive. We just need to teach your human body to keep up." By the second week, something had shifted. She moved through the forms with increasing confidence, her body beginning to remember what it was capable of. And when she sparred with Caspian, really sparred, not just practiced drills, something strange happened. They flowed together like water. She ducked under his arm before he'd fully extended it, already sensing where the blow would land. He stepped back to avoid her counterstrike, but she was already there, pivoting into his space, her elbow aimed at his ribs. He caught her arm, spun her, and she used the momentum to sweep his leg, nearly taking him down before he recovered. "Good," he breathed, and there was something raw in his voice. Again. They went again, and each time the dance grew more intricate, more instinctive. She knew where he would be before he moved. He anticipated her attacks like he'd seen them 1,000 times before. Their wolves were communicating in a language older than words, a language of pack and partner and something deeper still. It felt like coming home. Afterwards, sweating and exhausted, she sat on a stone bench and tried to understand what was happening to her. The pull she felt toward Caspian had grown stronger every day, a tug in her chest that only eased when he was nearby. When they touched during training, her skin tingled for hours. When he looked at her with those golden eyes, her heart beat faster, her wolf whined with longing. It felt like a mate bond, but that was impossible. She was rejected, broken, marked by another alpha's claim. The mate bond she'd been born to have was destroyed, corrupted, poisoned beyond repair. Whatever she felt for Caspian must be something else. Gratitude, probably. Trauma bonding at worst. A broken Omega's desperate need to cling to the first person who showed her kindness. It couldn't be real. Could it? She watched him walk across the courtyard to where a servant waited with a message. He moved like a predator even when relaxed, all controlled power and coiled strength. The sunlight caught the angles of his face, turning his golden eyes to molten amber. Beautiful, she thought. He's beautiful. And then, what would he want with something like me? She turned away before he could catch her staring. The messenger changed everything. He arrived on a lathered horse wearing the colours of the royal court, and she thought nothing of it at first. Caspian had explained that his fortress was connected to the larger political structure of the realm, that he had responsibilities beyond her care. She'd assumed he was some minor lord or regional authority, someone with enough power to protect her but not so much that her presence would matter. She was in the courtyard, practicing the forms Caspian had taught her, when the messenger dismounted and swept into a deep bow. "Your Majesty," he said loudly, clearly. "The council grows restless. Lord Vaughan has called an emergency session regarding the Eastern Territories. Your presence is required. Your Majesty. The words hit her like a physical blow. She turned slowly, disbelievingly, to find Caspian frozen in place. His expression was that of a man watching something precious shatter in slow motion. Your Majesty? Her voice didn't sound like her own. You're the king? I can explain. You lied to me. The betrayal was a knife twisting in her chest. This whole time, you've been lying. I told you everything. I trusted you. And She couldn't finish, couldn't find words for the enormity of the deception. She'd poured out her darkest secrets to a man she thought was simply kind, simply good. But he wasn't simple at all. He was the Lycan king, the most powerful alpha in the realm, and he'd been watching her like a specimen under glass, learning her weaknesses, her fears, her shame. She ran. She made it to the fortress gates before he caught her, his hand closing around her arm with careful strength. She tried to pull away, but he was immovable, his golden eyes blazing with desperation. Let me go! I was going to tell you. His voice cracked on the words. I swear, I was going to tell you. I couldn't what? Couldn't admit you were playing games with a broken Omega? That this was all some kind of royal entertainment? No. The word came out harsh, almost wounded. I couldn't tell you because I was afraid. That stopped her struggling. The Lycan king, feared throughout the realm, whispered about in terrified tones. The monster who had ruled alone for 15 years was afraid. Of what? Of her. Afraid of what? She demanded. Afraid you'd hate me for what I represent. Afraid you'd look at me and see just another alpha who wants to control you. Afraid... He released her arm, running his hands through his hair in a gesture of pure frustration. Afraid you'd run, exactly like you're doing now. And I can't let you run. Not from me. Not ever. That's not your choice to make. I know. He looked at her with such raw vulnerability that it stole her breath. I know I have no right to keep you here, no right to ask you to stay. But please, let me explain. Let me tell you everything. And then, if you still want to leave, I'll arrange safe passage anywhere you want to go. She should have said no. Should have demanded her freedom immediately, put as much distance between herself and this deception as possible. But something in his expression held her, the same thing that had held her from the beginning. He wasn't lying now. Whatever else he'd hidden, this desperate need was real. Fine, she said flatly. Explain. They walked through the fortress gardens as he talked. The afternoon light was fading toward evening, painting everything gold and amber, softening the harsh stone walls. I've been king for 15 years, Caspian began, since my father died and left me a throne I never wanted. He was not a good man, not a good ruler. He made decisions based on fear and power, crushing anything he perceived as a threat. Like the Silver Moon Pack, he flinched. Yes, like that. I was 15 when he ordered the massacre. He made me watch because he said a king needed to understand the cost of ruling. What I understood instead was that my father was a murderer, and that I would spend the rest of my life trying to atone for what he'd done. She walked in silence, listening. I never took a mate because I couldn't stomach the political alliances my council kept pushing. Every candidate was someone else's pawn, some other power's attempt to control the throne. I decided I'd rather rule alone than become another puppet. He paused. And then I found you. A dying Omega in the woods. Quite the political alliance. My wolf knew. He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. The moment I saw you, my wolf recognized you. He hadn't spoken to me in 10 years, not since my father forced me to witness atrocities in his name. But when I found you, he woke up. He said one word. She waited, her heart pounding. Mate. The word hung between them, impossible and undeniable. That's why I couldn't let you die. That's why I've been here every day, watching over you, unable to stay away. You're my mate, Elena. My true mate. The one person in all the realms who was made for me. That's not possible. Her voice came out strangled. I'm rejected. You were never truly claimed. The bond Marcus forced on you was dark magic, not true mating. Your wolf rejected it from the beginning. That's why you survived. Because your soul was waiting for something real. She shook her head, backing away. Even if that's true, you don't know who I am. I don't know who I am. Then tell me. He followed her, matching her step for step. What do you remember? Your name. You said you dreamed of a name. What was it? The memory surfaced unbidden. Silver moonlight, wolves with starlit eyes, a whisper of welcome after a lifetime of exile. Daughter. Finally. You've come home. Serafina, she said slowly, and the word felt right in a way nothing had felt right in as long as she could remember. My name is Serafina Voss, Caspian's wolf exploded to the surface. She felt it like a shockwave, the beast recognizing something, acknowledging something, roaring with a triumphant fury that shook the very stones beneath their feet. His eyes blazed pure gold, his body trembling with the effort of maintaining human form. Serafina Voss, he repeated, and his voice was layered now, wolf and man speaking together. Serafina Voss, daughter of the silver moon. You've heard that name before. I watched her die. The words came out ragged, torn from some deep well of buried pain. I was 15 years old, standing beside my father while his soldiers burned a village to the ground. A woman ran out of one of the burning houses, carrying a bundle in her arms. She was screaming a name. Serafina. She was screaming for her daughter. The world tilted beneath her feet. She handed the bundle to a servant, told her to run, to hide, to take the child somewhere safe. And then, my father's wolves caught her, and He couldn't continue. I never knew if the child survived. I prayed she did, but I never knew for certain. Until now. The truth crashed over her in waves. Her mother, the burning village, the servant who had carried her to safety, who must have eventually lost her to traffickers or death, leaving a child alone in a world that wanted her erased. Your father killed my family. The words came out hollow. Yes. Your father is the reason I grew up in cages, was sold to a monster, was tortured and rejected and left to die. Yes. She expected to feel rage, expected to hate him, to want to hurt him the way his bloodline had hurt her. But when she looked into his eyes that were wet with tears, eyes that held 15 years of guilt and grief and desperate hope, she felt something else entirely. She felt the mate bond pulse between them, undeniable and unbreakable. She felt her wolf reach for his across the space between them. She felt the beginning of something terrifying and beautiful and impossible to resist. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to forgive the sins of the father while falling for the son. Caspian reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. His hand cupped her face with impossible gentleness, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized she'd shed. You don't have to forgive anything, he said quietly. You don't have to fall for anyone. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to prove that I'm not him, that I would die before I hurt you, that my wolf has been waiting 15 years for you, even when I didn't know you existed. And if I can't? If this is too much? Then I'll let you go. It will destroy me, but I'll let you go. His forehead dropped to rest against hers. I told you before, I'm afraid. I'm the most powerful alpha in the realm, and I'm terrified of a woman who doesn't even remember her own past. Because losing you would break something in me that can never be fixed. She closed her eyes, breathing him in. Pine and wood smoke and something uniquely him, something that called to her wolf like a beacon in the darkness. My name is Serafina Voss, she said again, testing the shape of it. I am the last daughter of the Silver Moon Pack. And you are Caspian Thorn, the Lycan king, son of the man who destroyed everything I came from. Yes, this is impossible. Yes, I should hate you. Yes. She opened her eyes, meeting his golden gaze with her silver one. Two impossible creatures bound by tragedy and fate, and a connection neither of them had asked for. I don't, she said softly. I don't hate you. And I don't know what that means, but… He kissed her. It was gentle, almost tentative. Nothing like the violence she'd expected from alphas. His lips brushed hers with reverent softness, asking rather than taking, offering rather than demanding. And when she pressed into him, when she opened her mouth and let him deepen the kiss, his wolf's triumphant howl echoed through her very soul. Mate, it sang. Mine. Finally. After all this time. Mine. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Caspian rested his forehead against hers once more. Whatever comes next, he said, we face it together. Your enemies are my enemies. Your past is my burden, and your future, if you'll let me, is my purpose. What if I bring war to your doorstep? Then we'll fight it side by side. What if the prophecy is true? What if I'm meant to destroy everything? Then I'll burn alongside you. His smile was fierce, certain, a king who had finally found something worth dying for. I've spent 15 years ruling a kingdom I never wanted. You're the first thing I've ever chosen for myself. Serafina Voss, the last daughter of Silver Moon, the survivor, the broken Omega, who was learning to become something more, looked into the eyes of her impossible mate and made a choice. Then teach me, she said. Teach me to be worthy of standing beside a king. You already are, he answered. You always were. And somewhere in the east, Marcus Vaughan felt the shift in the corrupted bond, felt his rejected mate's wolf wake fully for the first time, felt her power beginning to rise like a tide that would drown everything in its path. He was no longer hunting a dying Omega. He was hunting a prophecy, and she was no longer alone. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 4. The night passed without sleep. Serafina stood at the window of her chamber, watching the moon trace its slow arc across the sky. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, silver eyes that now held knowledge she couldn't unknow, a face that belonged to a dead bloodline, a body that carried the weight of prophecy and massacre and impossible fate. She was Serafina Voss, daughter of Silver Moon, the last survivor of a slaughter ordered by the father of the man her wolf had chosen as mate. It should have been impossible to reconcile. The rational part of her mind kept circling the contradiction, trying to find the flaw in the logic that would make her feelings make sense. Caspian's blood had destroyed her family. His legacy had condemned her to a childhood of cages and cruelty. Every good thing he'd done for her was built on a foundation of bones, her people's bones. She should hate him. Her wolf disagreed. The bond pulsed between them even now, a golden thread connecting her heart to his, across the distance of stone walls and separate chambers. She could feel his restlessness, his guilt, his desperate hope that morning would bring something other than her deserved rejection. He wasn't sleeping either. He was pacing his study, probably, wearing tracks in ancient carpets while his wolf howled with longing. He's not his father, her wolf whispered. He was a child. He watched and wept and spent 15 years trying to atone. His blood is still on my family's graves, and yours is in his heart now. What matters more, the sins of the dead or the choices of the living? She didn't have an answer. When dawn finally broke, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, she heard footsteps in the corridor outside her door. They paused. She felt the weight of his presence like a physical pressure against her skin. He didn't knock, didn't enter, just stood there waiting, as if he knew that the next move had to be hers. She made him wait until the sun had fully risen before she opened the door. Caspian looked terrible. His dark hair was disheveled, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion, his clothes wrinkled as if he'd slept in them, or tried to. But when he saw her, something in his expression shifted. Hope and fear warring for dominance. "I need to show you something," he said quietly. She followed him through the fortress without speaking, down corridors she'd never explored, past servants who bowed but asked no questions. They descended into the lower levels, where the air grew cool and the light came from torches rather than windows, until they reached a door of ancient iron. Caspian unlocked it with a key he wore around his neck. "This is the king's private archive," he explained as they entered. "Every Thorn ruler has kept records here, the true records, not the sanitized versions that go to the public libraries." The room was vast, lined with shelves that stretched toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Scrolls and bound volumes filled every available space, their leather covers cracked with age. It smelled of dust and old paper and secrets kept too long. Caspian led her to a particular shelf and pulled down a thick tome, its pages yellowed but still legible. He handed it to her without ceremony. "My father's journal," he said. "The entries from the year of the massacre. I've read them 100 times, trying to understand why." "You deserve to read them too." She took the book with trembling hands. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you need to know the truth. All of it. Not just what I've told you, but his own words, his own justifications." He stepped back, giving her space. "And because I won't have any more secrets between us. Whatever you decide after today, whether you stay or go, it won't be because I hid something from you." He left her alone with the journal. She read for hours. The entries were meticulous, written in a precise hand that revealed nothing of emotion. King Aldrich Thorn had documented his decision to destroy the Silver Moon Pack with the same detachment he might have used to record crop yields or trade agreements. The prophecy had reached his ears through multiple seers, all saying the same thing. The last daughter of Silver Moon would either save the Lycan kingdom or destroy it. "I will not gamble my throne on the interpretation of madmen," he had written. "The Silver Moon wolves are few but powerful. Their bloodline carries gifts that could easily be turned against the crown. Better to eliminate the threat entirely than to spend decades waiting to see which way fate falls." There were pages detailing the planning, the troop movements, the timing, the orders to leave no survivors. And then, worse, the aftermath. The slaughter was complete. My general's report that every wolf bearing the Silver Moon mark has been accounted for. However, there is troubling news. A servant was seen fleeing with an infant during the assault. My men gave chase, but lost her in the forest. I have dispatched trackers to finish the task, but the child may have escaped. No matter. An infant alone in the wilderness will not survive long. And if by some miracle she does, she will grow up knowing nothing of her heritage. The prophecy cannot fulfill itself through a girl who does not know what she is. The journal continued for years after that, but Serafina couldn't read anymore. She closed the book and sat in silence, letting the weight of it settle into her bones. Aldrich Thorn had been wrong. She had survived. She had grown up in cages and cruelty, had been sold and tortured and rejected, and she had still survived. Not because of some prophecy or mystical protection, but because she was too stubborn to die. And now she was here, in his son's fortress, bound to his son's soul, carrying the future of a kingdom that had tried to erase her before she could walk. The irony was almost poetic. She found Caspian in the courtyard where they'd trained together. He was standing by the gates, the main gates thrown wide open with nothing but forest stretching beyond. "You read it," he said without turning. "Yes." "Then you understand why I can't ask you to stay." He finally faced her, and his expression was carefully blank, the mask of a king who had learned to hide his heart. "My father destroyed your family. My blood carries that guilt. Whatever the mate bond says, whatever my wolf wants, I have no right to expect anything from you." "So you're letting me go?" "I'm giving you a choice." He gestured toward the open gates. "Walk through those doors and I'll provide you with gold, supplies, safe passage to anywhere in the realm. I have allies who will protect you, houses where Marcus can't reach you. You'll never want for anything. And if he finds me anyway, then I'll hunt him down and kill him myself. That promise stands regardless of what you choose. You don't owe me anything for that. It's simply what he deserves." His voice hardened. "What he deserves for what he did to you, and what he deserves for daring to touch what's—" He stopped himself, jaw tightening. "What's yours?" she finished quietly. "What my wolf recognizes. But recognition isn't possession. I won't compound my father's sins by trapping you in a bond you didn't ask for." He stepped aside, clearing the path to freedom. "Go, Seraphina. Be free. Find somewhere the past can't touch you." She looked at the open gates, at the forest beyond, dappled with morning sunlight, promising anonymity and escape. She could disappear into those trees and never look back. She could find a small village somewhere, change her name again, live a quiet life where no one knew about prophecies or massacres or mate bonds with guilty kings. She could run. She was so tired of running. She walked forward, past Caspian, who stood rigid as stone, through the gates, onto the path that led into the woods. She made it to the edge of the tree line, where shadow met light, before she stopped. "You've been running your whole life," her wolf said, "from the cages, from Marcus, from the pain. Where has it gotten you?" "Nowhere. Everywhere. A lifetime of fleeing and she'd ended up right back where she started, alone, afraid, at the mercy of forces larger than herself. Unless she stopped. Unless she turned around and faced it all." Seraphina Voss turned around. Caspian hadn't moved. He stood by the open gates like a man awaiting execution, his golden eyes fixed on her with something that looked terrifyingly like shattered hope. She walked back to him, slowly, deliberately, giving him time to see that this wasn't impulse or obligation or trauma making her decisions for her. "I'm not staying for you," she said when she reached him. Her voice was steady, certain. "I'm staying because I'm done running. Because my entire life, other people have decided my fate. Traffickers, Marcus, your father, prophecies I never asked for. I'm taking it back. All of it." Something flickered in his expression. "And what are you going to do with it?" "I'm going to make everyone who hurt me pay." The words came out sharp, edged with the fury she'd been burying since she was old enough to understand what had been done to her. "Marcus. The council members who think I should be executed. The factions who want to use me as a weapon. Every single person who looked at a child in a cage and saw property instead of a person." "That's a long list." "I have time." She held his gaze without flinching. "And I have power. You said my bloodline was special, that silver moon wolves were rare and dangerous. If that's true, then I'm going to learn how to use it. Not for prophecies or kingdoms or anyone else's agenda. For me." Caspian was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile began to spread across his face. Not the careful, controlled expression she'd seen before, but something fierce and genuine and almost wild. "You're magnificent," he said. "I'm angry." "That too." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "I don't want a gentle queen, Seraphina. I never did. I want a partner who will challenge me, fight beside me, burn down everything that needs burning. I want someone who survived the worst the world could throw at her and came out with teeth. I'm not your queen. No, not yet. Not until you choose to be. And maybe not even then." His hand rose to cup her face, the touch feather light and questioning. "But whatever you are, whatever you become, I want to be there for it, if you'll let me." She should have pulled away, should have maintained the distance that kept her safe, but his touch didn't feel like danger. It felt like coming home. "I'll let you," she said. "For now." The smile he gave her was bright enough to light the darkest corners of her broken heart. Marcus Vaughan arrived 3 days later. The warning came from the border guards, a contingent of eastern wolves approaching under banner of peace, led by an alpha lord claiming urgent business with the king. Caspian had known immediately who it was. The corrupted bond still connected Serafina to her former tormentor, and she'd felt Marcus's approach like a spreading stain of dread. "Let me face him," she'd said. No. Caspian's refusal was immediate and absolute. "He doesn't get to see you until I understand what he wants." What Marcus wanted became clear the moment he strode into the throne room. He looked exactly as Serafina remembered. Tall, dark-haired, handsome in a cold way that promised nothing but cruelty. His smile was the same sharp thing that had haunted her nightmares, and his eyes swept the room with the confidence of a man who believed he'd already won. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing with exaggerated courtesy. "Thank you for receiving me on such short notice. I'm here about a matter of law." Caspian sat on his throne, expression unreadable. "Speak. It has come to my attention that you're harboring a wolf who belongs to me, an Omega I claimed years ago who fled my territory before the bond could be properly completed." Marcus's smile widened. "I want her back. I'm not aware of any wolf in my household who belongs to you. Aren't you?" Marcus produced a scroll from his jacket, unrolling it with theatrical flourish. "This is a copy of the claiming record, filed with the Eastern Registry. Elena, though I understand she's been calling herself Serafina lately, was legally bound to me 4 years ago. The bond was witnessed and documented according to the old laws. The claiming was forced." Caspian's voice could have frozen fire. "Forced claims are forbidden." "Prove it." Marcus spread his hands. "My witnesses say the ceremony was entirely consensual. Her witnesses are unavailable. And the old laws are quite clear. A rejected mate remains the property of her original alpha until she's claimed by another. Has she been claimed, Your Majesty? Has another alpha marked her as his?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Serafina stood in the shadows behind a pillar, watching through a crack in the servant's door. She could feel Caspian's rage through the mate bond, a furnace of fury barely contained. She could also feel his helplessness. Marcus was right about the law, an archaic, barbaric law that no one had bothered to change because it so rarely came into play. Caspian couldn't claim her without her consent. And she couldn't consent, not when the thought of another claiming ceremony sent her spiraling into memories of chains and pain, and Marcus's cruel smile as he held her down. "The woman you're speaking of is under my protection," Caspian said carefully. "She was found near death in my territory, and she remains here as my guest while she recovers." "How convenient. But protection isn't claiming, is it?" Marcus's eyes glittered with malicious triumph. "I'm prepared to be reasonable, of course. Return her to me willingly, and we can avoid any unpleasantness. And if I refuse? Then I'll be forced to bring this matter before your council. I understand they're already quite interested in your mysterious guest." Marcus's smile turned poisonous, especially given who she really is. The temperature in the room dropped by several degrees. "Yes," Marcus continued, savouring every word. "I know about the Silver Moon bloodline. I've known for years. It's why I acquired her in the first place. An Omega with that much latent power, properly controlled, would be invaluable. Imagine my disappointment when she proved so resistant to training. You tortured a child because of her bloodline. I invested in an asset that is now in your possession, hosting a prophecy that half your nobles believe will destroy the kingdom." Marcus addressed the room at large now, voice rising. "The last daughter of Silver Moon is here, Your Majesty, hiding behind your throne. And I have to wonder, does your council know? Do they understand what you're protecting?" The doors to the throne room burst open. Councillors flooded in, led by a red-faced Lord Ashworth, their expressions ranging from outraged to terrified. They'd clearly been listening at the door, waiting for confirmation of rumours that had been spreading for days. "Your Majesty!" Ashworth's voice was shrill with panic. Is this true? You've been harboring the Silver Moon heir in your own fortress. Step carefully, Ashworth. The prophecy speaks of destruction. Your own father understood the threat. He purged the bloodline for good reason. And now you've brought the last survivor into the heart of our kingdom. More voices joined the chorus. Demands for explanation, for accountability, for the immediate surrender of the dangerous Omega to whatever fate the council deemed appropriate. Some called for execution, others for imprisonment. A few suggested using her power as a weapon, harnessing the prophecy for their own ends. Through it all, Marcus stood smiling, watching the chaos he'd created with evident satisfaction. Seraphina had heard enough. She stepped out from behind the pillar, and the throne room fell silent. She looked different than she had weeks ago. Her hair was clean and brushed, her simple dress replaced by clothing fit for the fortress of a king. But it was more than appearance. She stood differently now, moved differently, held herself with the quiet confidence of a woman who had stopped being afraid. The dangerous Omega you're discussing, she said clearly, has a name. It's Seraphina Voss, and I'm not hiding behind anyone's throne. Marcus's smile faltered for just a moment before returning twice as sharp. Elena, how lovely to see you recovered. I was so worried when you ran off. The rejection was supposed to be painful, but I never intended for it to be permanent. Come home, and I'll make sure you're properly cared for. My home burned 20 years ago, and my name is Seraphina. She walked forward, past the gaping councillors, until she stood at the base of the throne's dais. Caspian had risen to his feet, his whole body taut with the effort of not putting himself between her and the room full of threats. You want to talk about prophecy? She addressed the council. About what the last daughter of Silver Moon will do. Let me tell you what I know. I know that I was ripped from my mother's arms as an infant. I know that your previous king ordered my entire family slaughtered because of words spoken by seers who are long dead. I know that I grew up in cages, was sold to a monster, was tortured and rejected and left for dead in the woods. And I know that after all of that, I'm still standing. She turned slowly, meeting the eyes of every councillor who had called for her death. If that's what the prophecy produced, a survivor who refuses to die, then maybe you should be asking what the Silver Moon bloodline was really capable of. Maybe you should be wondering what I could do for this kingdom instead of against it. Or you can keep screaming about destruction while the man who actually tortured me stands in your throne room claiming legal ownership of my body. The silence was absolute. Then Lord Ashworth recovered his voice. Pretty words, but they change nothing. The law is clear. You belong to Lord Vaughan until another alpha claims you. And the prophecy? The prophecy can burn. Caspian's voice cut through the room like a blade. He descended from the throne, each step deliberate, his eyes beginning to glow with the golden light of his wolf rising to the surface. The councillors scrambled backward, suddenly remembering why they usually avoided provoking the Lycan king. You want to invoke old laws, he said softly, dangerously. Let me invoke some of my own. The law of the throne states that the king's word is final in all matters of justice. The law of protection states that any wolf who claims sanctuary in the king's territory cannot be removed against their will, and the law of challenge states that any alpha who disputes the king's judgment may face him in single combat. He came to stand beside Seraphina facing the room. Seraphina Voss claimed sanctuary in my territory. She remains here under my protection, by my will, until she chooses otherwise. Any wolf, any councillor, any lord, any alpha who attempts to harm her, remove her, or use her against her will face me personally. You can't threaten the entire council, Ashworth sputtered. Caspian smiled. It was not a kind expression. I'm not threatening the council, Ashworth, I'm making a promise. His voice dropped to something barely above a whisper, but it carried to every corner of the room. Harm her, and I'll end this kingdom myself." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. No Lycan king had ever spoken such words. No ruler had ever placed a single person above the welfare of the realm. It was madness, treason against his own throne, an invitation to civil war. It was also, Serafina realized with dawning wonder, absolutely sincere. She looked at Caspian, at this impossible man who had just declared himself willing to destroy everything he'd built to keep her safe, and felt something shift inside her. The last wall, the final barrier she'd kept between herself and the mate bond, crumbled to dust. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "Yes," he replied, his golden eyes meeting her silver ones. "I do." Marcus broke the moment. "Very touching. But your threats don't change the law, Your Majesty. She's still mine until another claims her, and it seems she's not willing to let you do that." "I don't need to claim her." Caspian turned back to face his enemy. "I need only to kill you. Without the original alpha, the corrupted bond dissolves. And I've been looking for a reason to challenge you for years, Vaughn. You've just given me one." For the first time, genuine fear flickered across Marcus's face. "You can't challenge me over a property dispute. I'm not challenging you over property. I'm challenging you for crimes against an Omega under royal protection, for the use of forbidden dark magic, for trafficking in wolves." Caspian's smile turned vicious. "And for touching what's mine." The challenge hung in the air, irrevocable. Under the old laws, Marcus had to accept or forfeit all claims to Serafina permanently. But acceptance meant facing the Lycan king in combat, a fight he had no hope of winning. Marcus's confident facade cracked. He looked around the room, seeking allies, but found none. The councillors who had been calling for Serafina's blood moments ago were now very carefully studying the floor. None of them wanted to be caught between the king's wrath and a defeated challenger. "You'll regret this," Marcus snarled. "No," Caspian replied. "I don't think I will." Marcus turned and strode from the throne room, his wolves falling in behind him. At the door, he looked back one final time, his eyes finding Serafina's. "This isn't over," he promised. "You were mine first, and you'll be mine again, whatever it takes." Then he was gone. The silence that followed lasted only a moment before the room erupted. Councillors shouting, demanding explanations, threatening consequences, but Serafina barely heard them. She was looking at Caspian, at this king who had just set fire to his own political standing for her sake. "You didn't have to do that," she said again. "I know." He took her hand, interlacing their fingers with gentle certainty. "But you're done running, remember? Well, so am I. Whatever comes next, the council, Marcus, the prophecy, we face it together. Even if it means war? Even if it means everything burns." His grip tightened. "I meant what I said, Serafina. Every word." She believed him. That was the terrifying part. She believed him completely. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 5. The Challenge Came at Dawn. Marcus Vaughn stood at the palace gates with a blood-red banner flying above his contingent, the ancient symbol of formal challenge displayed for all the kingdom to see. He'd invoked the oldest law, older than councils, older than treaties, older than the Thorn dynasty itself, a blood duel for possession of a contested mate. The council couldn't refuse him. No one could. The law was carved into the very foundation stones of Lycan society, unbreakable and absolute. Serafina watched from the tower window as servants scrambled to prepare the dueling grounds. A circular arena was being marked in the main courtyard, ringed with torches that would burn until the fight was decided. By blood. By death. Let me fight for myself. Caspian didn't turn from where he stood by the fireplace, checking the straps on his leather armor. No. I'm the one he wants. I'm the one he hurt. This should be my battle. It is your battle. He finally looked at her, his golden eyes soft despite the hardness of his words. And you've been fighting it alone your entire life. Let me fight for you. Just this once. He'll kill you. He'll try. Caspian? He crossed the room in 3 strides, taking her face in his hands with desperate gentleness. I have spent 15 years waiting for something worth fighting for, waiting for someone to fill the hollow place my father's cruelty carved out of me. You are that someone, Serafina. You are everything. And I will not stand by while the man who tortured you walks free. And if you die, then I'll die knowing I finally did something worthy of the crown I never wanted. His forehead pressed against hers. But I don't intend to die. I intend to tear out his throat and spend the rest of my life making you happy. She wanted to argue, wanted to scream that she wasn't worth dying for, that no one should sacrifice themselves for a broken Omega who still flinched at loud noises and couldn't sleep without nightmares. But the words wouldn't come. Because when she looked into Caspian's eyes, she didn't see pity or obligation, or even simple protectiveness. She saw love, the kind of love that rewrote the rules of the world, the kind that burned down kingdoms and rebuilt them from the ashes. The kind she'd stopped believing existed the day she was sold to a monster in a cage. Come back to me, she whispered. Always. He kissed her once, soft and sweet and full of promises, and then he was gone. The dueling ground was packed with witnesses. Every noble in the kingdom had gathered to watch their king fight for a woman half of them still wanted dead. The council stood in grim-faced judgment, Lord Ashworth's expression suggesting he'd already written Caspian's eulogy. Common wolves pressed against the barriers, whispers running through the crowd like wildfire. Serafina stood at the edge of the circle, close enough to see every detail but forbidden from entering. Maren stood beside her, the old she-wolf's hand gripping hers with white-knuckled strength. He's the best fighter in the kingdom, Maren murmured. He's never lost a challenge. He's never fought Marcus. The words hung between them, heavy with fear neither could voice. Marcus entered the arena first, stripped to the waist, his body covered in ritual markings that glowed faintly in the torchlight. Dark magic. Serafina recognized the patterns, the same twisted symbols the witch had used during her forced claiming, the same corrupt power that had poisoned her rejection wound. He'd been planning this, preparing for years. Caspian entered from the opposite side, and the crowd fell silent. He wore no markings, carried no magical enhancement, just leather armor and the long claws of his half-shifted form, his eyes blazing gold in the flickering light. The herald's voice rang out across the courtyard. By the ancient laws of blood and bond. This duel is called between Caspian Thorn, King of the Lycans, and Marcus Vaughan, Alpha of the Eastern Territories. The contested prize is the Omega, known as Serafina Voss. The duel ends in death or surrender. May the ancestors judge fairly. No one expected surrender. The first clash was thunder. Marcus moved faster than any alpha should be able to move, his dark-enhanced muscles propelling him across the circle like a striking snake. Caspian barely deflected the blow, staggering back as claws raked across his shoulder guard, tearing through leather like paper. First blood. Seconds into the fight, and Marcus had already drawn first blood. The crowd gasped. Serafina's heart stopped, but Caspian didn't fall. He recovered, pivoted, launched a counterattack that would have eviscerated a normal wolf. Marcus twisted away with impossible speed, laughing as he did. "Did you think I came unprepared, Your Majesty?" Marcus circled his opponent, movements fluid and predatory. "I've been waiting for this moment since the day your father stole my birthright. The throne should have been mine, would have been, if Aldrich hadn't cheated his way to power. And now I'll take everything he built, starting with your precious mate." Caspian said nothing. He watched, waited, And when Marcus lunged again, he was ready. The next exchange was brutal. Claws met claws, bodies collided with bone-jarring force, blood splattered across the marked ground. Serafina watched Caspian take a slash to the ribs, another to his thigh, a third that opened his cheek to the bone. Each wound should have slowed him. Each wound only seemed to make him fight harder. But Marcus was faster, stronger. The dark magic coursing through his veins had turned him into something beyond natural alpha, a monster wearing a wolf's skin. He's holding back, Maren breathed. Marcus is toying with him. Serafina saw it too. The Eastern Alpha wasn't fighting to win quickly. He was fighting to humiliate, to break, to make Caspian suffer the way he'd made her suffer, drawing out the pain until death was a mercy. And Caspian was letting him. Every attack Marcus launched, Caspian intercepted. Not always successfully, but always between the Dark Alpha and Serafina. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds, swaying on his feet, but he kept positioning himself as a shield, protecting her even now, keeping Marcus's attention away from her even as it cost him everything. Something cracked inside her chest. Not broken, shattered open, like a shell that had been holding something precious, finally giving way to let it breathe. Her wolf, dormant since the rejection, stirred. No, she told it desperately. I can't. I'm not strong enough. You survived, her wolf answered. You survived cages and cruelty and magic that should have killed you. You are stronger than you know. He'll die. Caspian will die if I don't then stop him. Stop them both. The power rose from somewhere deep, somewhere she hadn't known existed. It felt like moonlight crystallizing in her blood, like starfire burning through her veins. The silver moon heritage she'd never been taught to use, awakening at last. The prophecy, the choice. The last silver moon wolf would have the power to end the bloodshed between packs forever, but only if she chose love over vengeance. She understood now. The seers hadn't predicted destruction or salvation. They'd predicted transformation, the power to change everything, locked inside a girl who had every reason to choose violence, waiting to see what she would become. Marcus had tortured her, had tried to claim her, break her, kill her. She had every right to want his blood, his pain, his death. Vengeance was hers to take. But vengeance wasn't what she wanted. She wanted the man bleeding in the arena. She wanted a future that didn't taste like ashes. She wanted to be more than what her trauma had made her. Wanted to choose who she became rather than letting her worst moments define her forever. Love over vengeance, hope over despair, choice over fate. Serafina stepped into the dueling circle. The crowd's gasp was deafening. Entering a blood duel uninvited meant death. The ancient laws were clear. Any who crossed the sacred boundary forfeited their life to the combatants. She should have been cut down the moment her foot touched the marked ground. Instead, light exploded from her skin. Silver light, pure and blinding, pouring from every pore like she'd swallowed the moon itself. Her wolf surged to the surface, not the timid, broken creature that had cowered in her consciousness for years, but something else entirely. Something ancient and powerful and luminous. She shifted. The transformation was nothing like what she'd experienced before. There was no pain, no struggle, no fighting against a body that didn't want to change. She simply became, flowing from woman to wolf like water finding its natural course. And the wolf that emerged was impossible. She stood nearly as tall as a Lycan in half-shift, her fur the colour of liquid moonlight, her eyes blazing silver bright enough to cast shadows. Power radiated from her in waves, pressing against everyone in the courtyard like a physical weight. Wolves fell to their knees, unable to resist the compulsion. Even the council members stumbled, their ancient authority meaning nothing before this primal force. The Silver Queen, someone whispered, and the words rippled through the crowd like prayer. Marcus had frozen mid-attack, his dark-enhanced body suddenly sluggish against the light pouring from her. The corrupt magic in his veins writhed and screamed, burning where her radiance touched it. "What?" he snarled, but his voice cracked. for the first time since he'd bought a child from traffickers 20 years ago, Marcus Vaughan was afraid. "What are you?" Serafina answered with her wolf's voice, deeper than sound, resonating in the bones of everyone present. "I am the last daughter of Silver Moon. I am the survivor of your cruelty and the witness to your sins, and I am done being your victim." She moved, not with rage, though she had every right to it, not with vengeance, though he deserved nothing less. She moved with the calm, absolute certainty of someone who had finally accepted what she was and what she was capable of. The dark magic shattered. It broke against her light, like glass against stone, all of Marcus's carefully cultivated power dissolving in an instant. He screamed as the corruption burned away, as the unnatural strength fled his muscles, as he became what he had always been beneath the magic, a cruel man with no power left to hide behind. She didn't give him time to recover. Her jaws closed around his throat. A single bite, precise and final, the same throat that had whispered horrors in her ear for years, the same voice that had told her she was property, that she was worthless, that she belonged to him. Marcus Vaughan died with her name on his lips. The silence that followed was absolute. Serafina shifted back slowly, the silver light fading as she returned to human form. She stood naked in the dueling circle, splattered with the blood of her tormentor, trembling with the aftershocks of power she didn't fully understand. But she wasn't afraid. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid at all. Caspian reached her first. He was barely standing, wounds still bleeding freely. But he stripped off what remained of his shredded armor and wrapped it around her shoulders. His hands shook as he pulled her close, uncaring of the crowd watching, uncaring of anything except the woman in his arms. "You impossible creature," he breathed. "You magnificent, terrifying, impossible creature. You were dying. I was winning. You were bleeding out. That's how I win." But his voice cracked on the last word, and he buried his face in her hair. "Don't ever do that again. Don't ever walk into a battle that isn't yours." "All my battles are mine now." She pulled back to look at him, at the wounds that needed tending, at the golden eyes that watched her like she was the sun. "I'm done letting other people fight for me. Even you." "Even me?" "Especially you." She touched his face, her fingers tracing the cut on his cheek that would scar. "I love you too much to watch you die for me." The words fell between them, simple and devastating. She hadn't meant to say them, hadn't even been certain they were true until they left her mouth. But now that they were spoken, she couldn't take them back. Didn't want to. Caspian made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob, pulling her closer. "Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you, Caspian Thorn. King of the Lycans and the most stubborn, infuriating, wonderful man I've ever known. I love you, and I choose you. And if you die before I get the chance to spend decades proving it, I'll find you in the afterlife and kill you again myself." He kissed her. In front of the council. In front of the kingdom. In front of Marcus's cooling body and the shocked witnesses who had gathered to watch a blood duel and witnessed something far more significant. The Lycan king kissed his mate with all the desperation and devotion he'd been holding back since the night he found her in the woods. When they finally broke apart, the courtyard was still silent, but the quality of the silence had changed. It was no longer fear or judgment. It was awe. The coronation took place 3 days later. There had been opposition, of course. Council members who insisted that an Omega couldn't rule, that the prophecy made her too dangerous, that tradition demanded a different path. But they'd watched her break dark magic with pure will and kill an enhanced alpha with her bare teeth. No one argued very loudly. The ceremony was held in the Great Hall, every torch blazing, every noble in attendance. Serafina wore silver, a gown that caught the light like liquid moonlight, a crown of woven branches and gems that had been crafted specifically for her. She looked like what she was, the last daughter of a massacred pack, risen from ashes to claim a throne. But before the coronation could proceed, Caspian did something unexpected. He knelt. The Lycan king, still bearing the scars from his duel, still recovering from wounds that would have killed a lesser wolf, sank to his knees before her. Not the formal genuflection of a subject to a queen. Something more personal, more profound. "You don't need me," he said, his voice carrying through the silent hall. "You never did. You survived alone for 20 years, faced horrors I can't imagine, broke magic that should have destroyed you. You don't need a king or a mate or anyone to complete you." He looked up at her, golden eyes bare of any mask or pretense. "But I'm asking anyway. Will you let me spend my life proving I'm worthy of you? Will you let me stand beside you, not because you need protection, but because I can't imagine standing anywhere else? Will you let me love you, Serafina Voss, for whatever time the ancestors grant us?" The hall held its breath. Serafina looked at the man kneeling before her, the king who had found her dying in the woods and carried her home, who had fought for her and bled for her and offered her freedom even when it would have destroyed him. The son of her family's murderer, who had spent 15 years trying to atone for sins he hadn't committed. The mate her wolf had chosen before either of them understood what it meant. She reached down and pulled him to his feet. "We're both a little broken," she said softly. "Maybe we can be whole together." The claiming that followed was nothing like what Marcus had attempted. There was no force, no dark magic, no terror. Just Caspian's lips against her throat, gentle and questioning, waiting for her nod before his teeth grazed her skin. Just a brief, bright pain that transformed instantly into warmth, into connection, into a bond that sang between them like a promise made in starlight. When it was done, when the mark on her throat gleamed silver instead of the blackened wound Marcus had left, Serafina felt something she hadn't felt since before she could remember. Complete. Not because Caspian completed her. She had been complete the moment she chose to stop running, to face her fears, to become more than what her trauma had made her, but because she had finally allowed herself to want something beyond survival, to reach for happiness instead of just endurance, to be loved. They were crowned together, king and queen of the Lycans. The council that had called for her execution weeks ago now bent the knee without protest. The nobles who had wanted to use her as a weapon recognized the weapon had chosen its own wielding, and the common wolves who had watched a rejected Omega become the Silver Queen whispered stories that would become legends. That night, after the celebrations had ended and the guests had departed, Serafina stood on the balcony of the royal chambers and looked out at the kingdom she now ruled. The moon was full and silver, casting everything in gentle luminescence. In the distance, wolves sang to the night sky, their voices rising and falling in harmonies that had existed since the beginning of their kind. It was beautiful, wild and ancient and undeniably home. Caspian came to stand beside her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. Having second thoughts? No. She leaned back into him, marveling at how natural it felt, how right. "I'm thinking about the prophecy, how everyone was so afraid of what I might become." "And what did you become?" She considered the question seriously. The prophecy had spoken of destruction or salvation, as if those were the only options. As if a girl born to a massacred pack had no choice but to avenge or to serve, to break the kingdom or to be broken by it. But she hadn't done either. She had survived. She had grown. She had fallen in love with an impossible man and claimed power she hadn't known she possessed. She had killed her tormentor not out of vengeance, but out of protection. Protection of herself, of Caspian, of the future they might build together. She had chosen. "I became myself," she said finally. "Not what the prophecy wanted or Marcus wanted or even what your father feared. Just myself. Serafina Voss. Survivor. Queen. Mate. Caspian pressed a kiss to her hair. The seers were fools to think you could be contained in a prophecy. You're too vast for their petty predictions. Flatterer. Truth-teller. He turned her in his arms, cupping her face with hands that had learned to be gentle despite their strength. You are the most remarkable thing that has ever happened to me. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt your worth again. Even when the Council gives us trouble, especially then. Even when the Eastern Territories need to be reorganized, I'll handle the paperwork personally. Even when I wake up screaming from nightmares about cages and chains. His expression softened into something so tender it made her chest ache. I'll hold you until the screaming stops. And then I'll hold you until morning. And every morning after that, for as long as you'll let me. She kissed him then, slow and deep, pouring everything she felt into the contact, the fear and the hope and the love that had somehow bloomed in the ruins of her broken heart, the gratitude and the joy and the fierce, determined belief that the future could be different than the past. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. I spent my whole life waiting to be rescued, she said quietly. Waiting for someone to see me, to save me, to give me worth. And then, you found me in those woods and I thought, finally someone will make me matter. Serafina, but that's not what happened. She pulled back to meet his eyes. You didn't rescue me, Caspian. You gave me space to rescue myself. You held the door open, but I'm the one who walked through. And that's worth more than any grand gesture or romantic sacrifice. I would have sacrificed everything for you. I nearly did. I know, but I didn't need you to. I just needed you to believe that I could do it myself. She smiled, and it was the smile of a woman who had finally found her place in the world. You believed in me before I believed in myself. That's the gift. That's what saved me. He had no words. For once, the Lycan king was rendered speechless by the woman in his arms, so he kissed her again instead. The prophecy spoke of destruction or salvation. Scholars had debated its meaning for generations, trying to interpret whether the last daughter of Silver Moon would be hero or villain, savior or catastrophe. They had all been wrong. Serafina Voss didn't destroy the Lycan kingdom. She didn't save it either. At least not in the dramatic, earth-shattering way the seers had predicted. What she did was quieter and more profound. She chose. She chose love over vengeance, hope over despair, future over past. She chose to stop being a victim and become a survivor. She chose to accept a mate bond she hadn't asked for and transform it into something beautiful. She chose to rule beside a man who had once represented everything she should have hated. And in doing so, she proved that the sins of fathers need not determine the fates of sons. She chose herself. And in choosing herself, she changed everything. The rejected Omega, who had cried alone in forgotten woods, became the Silver Queen, beloved by her people, feared by her enemies, equal partner to the most powerful Alpha in the realm. The broken girl who had been told she was worthless proved that worth isn't given. It's claimed. On the night of their coronation, as the full moon bathed the kingdom in silver light, Serafina stood beside her mate and looked toward a future that had once seemed impossible. She was no longer running, no longer hiding, no longer waiting for someone else to decide her fate. She was home, and she would never be anyone's victim again. The end. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you.